thanks for coming to another episode of Systems Are Messy. Today, I have Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He is an organizational psychologist and a best-selling author. He's written several books, many of which I have read even. Fantastic. He's got a whole whack of kids. Are they at home there with you today?
They are home and not here. I actually have a separate house that I use for an office, which is about 10 minutes from my house, but they are home and I'm going
Oh,
to go
that's
see them right after we
fantastic.
talk. And they are definitely home chilling.
So you've written a new book. It's called Personality Isn't Permanent, which I love. So tell us about it.
Wow. Well, this book kind of explains a lot of the incorrect views, or let's just say the false limiting views that are popular. It explains why personality tests like Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, which are obviously very popular, these tests are non-scientific and non-helpful. And it really explains how things like trauma and story and environment really are the things shaping you and about how you can change those things. So it's a deep dive, fun book that kind of busts a lot of myths and really kind of gives a lot of good science on how people can change. It's fun.
Awesome. So I would ask then, what's the difference between personality tests and astrology?
Well, it depends on the personality test, but most of the ones like Myers-Briggs and things like that, probably not that much. It's just a general framework for looking at things, but yeah. I mean, one of the big things that I learned during my PhD program, which was very surprising. So there's a concept called psychometrics, which is basically about how tests are developed, validated, and things like that. And yeah, I guess I was just told many, many times that tests that put people into broad categories and that are not valid nor reliable, meaning that you're going to get the same score over and over. Like personality tests, you're going to get different scores all the time. You're going to get different scores in different environments. You're going to get different scores next week, next month. And so these just are not useful tests, but they also overly categorize people. They're not helpful, but they're not scientific. So they're pretty much on the same level as horoscopes from a scientific perspective.
I am frequently told that the fact that I question personality tests proves my personality type.
Okay, so what type did they put you in?
These days in Myers-Briggs, I am an INTJ.
Okay, great. Well, I like that you said these days because that's more accurate. Research is very clear that your former self is not the same person as you are today. You're probably not the same person you were 10 years ago, right?
I'm a fan of personality tests in the sense that I think they're fun crap. Like they're crap,
Yeah,
but
they're playful.
Fun. Right. And
Very
I've
playful.
Always enjoyed them. So 10 years ago, I was an ENTP, and when my son died 5 years ago,
Wow.
I retyped and as an INTJ, and I was told that this was a trauma response and that I would possibly at some point in time revert back. I haven't reverted back because I like my personality the way it is now.
Well, and that's actually a crucial aspect of personality is that its preferences and its tolerances, and now your preferences have fundamentally changed as a person. Your preferences aren't going back. You've gone through enough experiences that you're not going to go back to the person 10 years ago because you're a different person today. and so it's absurd to think people think, so this is one of the key problems with personality or how people view it is they believe that it genuinely is innate and that it's inflexible, that it's non-changing, and that personality is something that you must discover, which is why you use these tests. Personality is trained, it's flexible, it changes, and it's ongoing changes. I mean, that's what the research shows is that over a person's lifetime, the tests that they take, like when they're 12 or even 20, are not going to even be anywhere near the tests that they take when they're 30, 40, 50, or 60-year role. I mean, the fact that your child died, that's fundamental. How could that not change your personality?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's insane. I mean, I'm very sorry to hear that. And it is a trauma response, but that doesn't mean that you're still caught in the trauma. Maybe you are, but maybe you've taken time to reframe it, and maybe you've taken time to resolve it and come to a different understanding of who you are as a result of it. And maybe even, and so it's not like you're still stuck in that trauma.
Right. I think for me personally, trauma has been a catalyst for a great deal of growth. It
Yes.
is what allows me to examine my life and then change it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a crucial. I would say the exact same thing about myself. I've gone through a lot of trauma. There's actually a story, and I don't know if you actually got to it, but in the back of the book, in the conclusion of the book, I actually tell a story of a woman whose son did die. Um, he was 4 years old when he fell into an irrigation canal, and obviously this woman went through a deep depression for quite a few years. Um, but actually, it was probably a year that it was like to the trenches of potential suicide.
Mhm.
But ultimately, you fast forward a day, and again, this is like now it's like 20 years, maybe 15 years ago. But she now counsels people, like she now spends a lot of time helping people who are going through similar grief. And what ended up happening, so there's a really good quote. And I don't know if this relates to you, it'd be interesting to hear. There's a quote that says that trauma isn't what happens to you, it's what you hold inside in the absence of an empathetic witness. I don't know if that relates to you. Maybe you had someone that you could talk to about it, or you know that you went through. Maybe it was multiple people.
Mhm.
What was it for you that ultimately helped you to view this thing from a positive, growth oriented perspective, where it's really helping you rather than continuing to trap you?
So that's an interesting question. For me, it was um, being able to build out the habits and patterns in my life that allowed me to thrive. So I lost a lot of blood. I very nearly died. And it wasn't just the trauma of my loss, it was my own personal trauma
Physical,
too.
yeah, your body was changed.
Right. So I would get up and I would make the bed and then I would collapse back down onto it because I didn't have the energy. So building systems and rituals and little things that I could do to feel good, even for just a minute, was what allowed me to just go forward day by day. And then when those things became habits, then there were bigger things that I could look and reach for. It was
Yeah.
always a matter of trying to figure out how to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what I also hear is the development of confidence again,
Hmm.
which obviously can be destroyed through something like that. Like the habits and even just the moving forward, even in incremental ways on a daily basis, allowed you to eventually build the confidence that you can build a life again, or
Hmm.
build something beyond who you are. I mean, that's the key, is becoming flexible, and believing that you can do something more, be something more. Like the problem with trauma, and even just how most people view personality is very rigid. It's very dogmatic. Like you're non-flexible in who you are, what you can do. So you might as well just find the narrow niche that is the true you, um, rather than being flexible and seeing that you can be different things in different ways. I mean, what the research shows, which is really cool these days, and I'd look up if you're interested in it. There's a TED Talk called "The Psychology of Your Future Self."
Hmm.
Have you seen that one by
I think I've
Daniel
seen
Gilbert?
that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Daniel Gilbert's a Harvard psychologist, and he and others have talked about how it's actually impossible to live deliberately and to live intentionally if you don't have a clear sense of who your future self is. If like think about it, if you didn't know who you were planning to be, who would you be today?
Right.
It's like almost impossible, right?
Hmm.
And trauma in a lot of ways can shatter that for a short period of time, or sometimes a long, where you get so slammed that you're just like, I have no clue what I want anymore. But as you build that small confidence, you can then begin to set goals again and think about, who do I plan to be? And then once you do that, then you can actually have an identity again, and that an identity that's not in a fast food delivery course like a personality. I mean, you can build the identity that you want, that you really believe in, and then you can start to live that out.
In my case, I had to reconstruct an identity for myself without my son in it. And that took a
Huge.
long time. It took a long time, but it had to be done for my own personal sanity, for my other children, for the child that followed. That work had to be done. And so I think that when we place emphasis on personality, we negate work that we can do, the growth that
There's
can
huge
happen.
work that can be done. I love what you're saying. Well, and that's the most honest thing you can do given your current context. I mean, you could continue living in the past and continue to be destroyed by the fact, but then what would that do to your kids, right? What would that do to, and so the truth of the matter is that given your current situation with your kids, the way you have them, and I guess sounds like the new one that comes in, the most like thoughtful and mindful thing you could do is to construct an identity that you are not the person today that did have that episode. You're now this person today, and this is who you're striving to be given this situation, given this context, because you're no longer in the context of the person who did have that episode. Like you're now in a new context and you are a new person, and your identity needs to be built based on this situation, based on who you're striving to be, not based on the former context, right?
Right. So let's talk about how you build that new context. For me, that was journaling. For you, I know that's through journaling. So tell me
Hugely.
about your process.
Journaling is so, so big. Obviously, the concept of the empathetic witness and talking to people is really good. Telling people, storytelling, telling the story of who you want to be. But journaling is a really good daily process for I kind of look at it as a drafting process. Like when you're writing a book, you've got to do 1,000 drafts. Like journaling is just the way to draft your identity. Today it's going to be one way. Tomorrow it's a finer comb. But yeah, I think because it's essential to know who you want to be in order to live intentionally today. I spend time on a daily basis. Like even in the morning, it could be 5 to 15 minutes, but I just find it really clears the mental fog and it allows me to re-examine what I'm going to do today rather than being reactive and basically subconscious and on autopilot. I'm like, who do I want to be so that I can then live intentionally for the day, not unconsciously. And so, I have plenty of processes for doing it. I wish I just had my journal here. It's in the other room. But as far as what I wrote today, as an example, I wrote about kind of some of the wins from yesterday, because yesterday I really tried to be intentional with my kids. Like when I go home, it's a madhouse. It's a very different environment than the one I'm in right now. Like right now I'm in this like peaceful, serene environment. I'm talking to someone like you about these ideas. And then I go home and there's 5 kids and it's a total mess and it's
Right.
crazy. And my kids are jumping on me and saying, let's play and stuff like that. And often the transfer from one environment to the other, I can be less adaptive than could be. And so yesterday, so one of the things I journaled about, because a few days ago did not go so well, was I journaled about, okay, here's what happened yesterday. I didn't go so hot. This is what I really want to do today. This is what I want to do when I'm with my kids. And just kind of like actually just using it as a thoughtful process. I mean, you can obviously go way back, and journal about, traumatic experiences from far back. And, just the very nature of exposing yourself to it can neutralize the emotion so that it can be information you can use rather than emotion that's currently driving you. I think and so I like asking questions as well. Like I like asking myself questions like how would my future self view this situation, or how would they have dealt with that, or like, what are the main things I'm trying to accomplish now? So I mean, I use it just as a thinking tool and just as a way to like really handle my emotions and also think about what I'm trying to accomplish today and long term. It's just such a brilliant tool. I just love it.
Writing is very foundational for me, definitely. So how do you keep everything then on a calendar? Does it live in your journal? How do you plan your time?
Mm-hmm. Um, so Mike, I do have a calendar. I don't actually do it anymore. My assistant does it at this point, but I have very hard boundaries. So like after 3 p.m., for example, like Eastern time, my time, like I'm gone, because like in a typical situation, my kids would be getting out of school at that time, and so I would pick them up. And so I'm really big on boundaries, and within the realm of those boundaries, I let my calendar get manipulated whatever I want. But as far as for myself, because I enjoy writing and creative work, and I enjoy doing that before the messiness of lots of inputs reaching my brain in the morning, because it's kind of interesting. Like once you get used to realizing that inputs start to change your thought patterns, you can start to feel your brain speed up pretty big if you like check your email. All of a sudden, your just brain gets very proactive at working on things, and it then leads to difficulty. And so I think for me, I try as a rule before 8 a.m. to do a lot of inputs. I'll still listen to like great audiobooks if I'm like really digging on an audiobook. I don't think that really messes with my mind because I'm already working on that.
Mhm.
But I try to journal and then do creative work, generally in the form of in my case, writing before 8 a.m. And then between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m., I kind of let all sorts of craziness happen. But right now it's, doing amazing things like this. And I am actually working on a book right now. So I'm spending a little bit more time on that. But that's, basically that's it.
So how then do you review or process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do review. I like doing like a weekly review and even a monthly review and a quarterly review.
Mhm.
So like on a weekly basis, I'll just like, I have key metrics that I look at. Like there's a few key things that I'm looking at as far as what are the things that I'm actually tracking right now. And And so I track those on a weekly and on a monthly basis. We set weekly, monthly goals. And then I really like quarters. Like quarters are just a great way to review as well. And so I set goals in each of those categories, although I would say my goals are kind of bigger than that now. I think quarters are more useful now to me than weeks are, as far as looking at what I'm going for, or even years. Like, because like I'm doing like 2 books this year as an example. And so like it's a lot harder to track those on a daily basis than, like, let's just say like the amount of blog posts I would used to write. And so like bigger projects are more difficult to track on a daily basis. But I have like yearly goals, and then like every week I do have a spreadsheet of like all of the metrics every week. Boom, 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 boom. As far as like, so I think it's crucial to track for many different reasons. I think you get to the point where you enjoy it. You get to the point where you just like to see it, even if you're not actually like advancing to the level you want. Awareness is key, right?
I like them.
I love it. I love
I
it. I'm
do.
with you. I geek on it.
Mm-hmm. So, how do your goals and reviews work into the vision of who you want to be?
Hugely, hugely. So I'm a big believer in starting with identity before anything else, and then from there going to goals, systems, environments, and things like that. So identity is very much like, who is your future self? What is their situation? So I'll give an example of my former self. Like me in 2015 was just starting to blog, and actually even before I started to blog, I decided that I wanted to be a professional writer, and I detailed out the characteristics of my situation. I wanted to be writing for the big 5, like one of the big New York publishers. I wanted to be traditionally published. I wanted to be making enough money to provide for my family so that I didn't have to do anything else. Like I'm sketching out my situation and myself, having conversations like this with people like you. And so once you have the future self clarified, which really helps you with your own identity here and now, because then it can drive what you do. Then to me, that's where I start setting goals. And in my case, I think goals really need to be structured. Like, your brain really likes structure. And so, yeah, for me in this case, I decided I just want to figure out how to get a 6-figure book deal. Like, that's obviously a big goal, but I wanted to figure out how to do it. And I didn't really have too big of a deadline. I wanted to do it before I got out of college, essentially. And so once you have a goal, then you can reverse engineer it. And so that's where I then figured out my process. And I'm a big believer that process should be shaped by the goal, and process then should be reshaped by the metrics you get along the way. So I think that that's where tracking comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that far too much people place too much emphasis on the process. I'm a lot more interested in outcomes. And so it's like, if my outcomes aren't improving, then my process isn't working. So therefore I need to change my process. And so I'm just, I'm very outcome focused, to be fully honest with you. Even though I love process, if the process isn't helping the outcome, then it's the wrong process. And so the tracking helps me determine if my process is working.
Yeah, I find that's definitely the case for me too. And being able to see the metrics over time tells you what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, but also what you need to change. And I think that's key.
Helps you realize what to focus on
Mm-hmm.
or not focus on, right?
Right.
Because there's certain areas where you're just like, oh wow, it's been like 2 or 3 months and I've been neglecting that, right? Like, and that's crucial.
So tell me then, how often do things slip through the cracks for you?
I mean, all the time. I think that it really depends on what it is. Like, I get pretty hyper focused on a few things, and I let a lot of things fall through the cracks. I tend to prefer being really accelerant or like really excellent at a few things. And then I narrow the things that I'm tracking. And so I think it's constantly a process of figuring it out. But yeah, I'm trying to think like with where I'm at right now. So like, I would say the PhD to some degree fell through the cracks. It took me probably an extra year to finish it, but I was conscious of the idea that I wanted to launch like Willpower Doesn't Work as an example before I got out. And I did limit the potential of that book because I did that, because once I launched it, I'm like, well, I can't focus on that anymore because I need to go finish school. And so I think that obviously planning helps you to know the order of operations. And so I think in that case, I'm still okay with how I allowed it to work. But like when it comes to right now, my goals are pretty narrow. And so nothing is really falling through the cracks right now. But I will say there's a few things I could be tracking better. And maybe you actually have some thoughts on this, but it's easy for me to track business related things, a little more difficult for me to track more personally related things. Like yesterday, if I were to track like either just good or bad, I could mark up with my kids, it was an excellent day. The day before was a bad one. And I think maybe even just tracking that would be good. But there's a few things that I don't think I am tracking, which I'm planning to be more intentional about, that I should be tracking.
I definitely track how much time I spend with my kids. So I have three. Once you're outnumbered, you really have to be very intentional with that time. So you have twins. How old are they now?
15 months.
15 months. So that's a little bit more of an onslaught. But with the older kids, I try for 15 minutes of a focused alone time with each kid.
That's
And
crucial. I mean, that's crucial. I mean, it actually, in my opinion, one-on-one time with kids, I mean, even 15 minutes is really in large part a determining factor in the level of relationship you have with them in the future, and like whether or not they're going to like stay near you. Right.
right.
I mean, I think it's essential. So, I mean, I
Now,
love that.
I'll note that we homeschool. So when I say 15 minutes of alone time, what I actually mean is 15 minutes doing the thing my kid wants to do.
Good.
So it's 15 minutes of listening to my 8-year-old tell me about his video game without rolling my eyes
Yep.
or
Just being
being like,
interested.
yeah, I don't want to hear about this right now. It's very much about what that child is looking to get from you at that time. And I think that's a good way to really explore those daily things with your kids.
I think that's so cool. I love that. I mean, yesterday I was thinking about it because like my kids often like we read our kids books. Like
Mm-hmm.
my wife will like read, like I think she's reading like some book like Dragon Fury. I don't know what she's reading, some fictional book for the kids. But then often they'll like want like, so there's a few things I could do because all the kids are sitting there listening to the book, and so I could either chill with them or I can go like space out for a while or go for a walk. And yesterday I just had the thought, like if I just sit here with Caleb, and he's like laying on me while we're listening, like I don't have to do that and the relationship will be fine. But if I do it for 10 or 15 minutes, it actually is an investment in him and my relationship. And just seeing that anything that you could do, I mean, you listening to your kid talk about video games, like if you see it as an investment in the relationship as a long-term thing that you're, then it becomes valuable where you're like, yeah, would I rather invest in this relationship or rather go and watch a YouTube video for 20 minutes? Like sometimes you need to decompress, but if you think about it from like an investment, someone's like, yeah, I would love to invest in this relationship for a minute.
The relationship with your kids is one that lasts for their entire life if you do it right. So I'd rather invest the time in my children always.
Agreed, 100%.
So tell me what you wish you could do better when it comes to your planning.
I think I would like to plan more things like events for my family. Like last month, my wife and I went to Chicago and we went to a great restaurant and we spent like 2 days together, and that was huge for us. And I think like I'm a big fan of putting things in the calendar, like even if it's like a few months in advance. And I think that that's something that I want to get better at. Like every month I do a one-on-one daddy date with the kids where like they just choose what we do, and we just go do what they do for like an hour. It could be bowling, could be just like literally coloring at my house. But I want to be better at intentionally planning events that are scattered throughout the month or scattered throughout the year, and having anticipation. I mean, anticipation is so big for relationships. And so like actually just planning things and having events rather than not letting those things go. Like I like the quote, and it's kind of been on my mind lately, that like the cost of doing nothing. There's a huge cost of doing nothing, right? And it's like, it doesn't take that. If it's planned, you will do it. And if you do it, there is an impact. And if you don't do it, you think, well, things will be fine, but they're kind of not moving forward. And so I think that's the big one for me right now, is being more intentional and more creative about my relationships. I'm already very intentional and creative about my work, and there's plenty planned. I already know like all the places I'm going to be this year on my calendar for my work. but I think applying that same principle in the key areas of my life and being creative and intentional about the experiences. We're not bad about it, but I could be a lot better.
So in the summertime, we block off a weekend camping trip once a month. I find those to be really great activities. And then we actually plan a full vacation at least once a year, generally twice a year. Because the idea is that if it's on the calendar and we buy the tickets and then the kids get to look forward to it. And that's been really great for us, I think.
I think that's huge. I mean, our kids, when they have something to look forward to, it's like there is a special magic in the air. Like even if
Mm-hmm.
it's like a month or 2 or 5 months away, it's like, yeah, we got this thing. Like it feels real now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested to see how things continue to go in our current environment. We are planning a trip to Washington in September. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
Right
I
now,
hope you
it's
get to go.
all up in the air, but usually in normal circumstances, that's how it's worked for us, and it works well, being able to say this is what we're going to go and do, and they have something to look forward to. And yeah, that anticipation is important. I think that being able to look forward to things makes life better just overall.
There's a book that I would recommend that's a lovely book. It's called Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart. Have you read that one?
No, I have not, but I have heard of it, and I will link it in the show
Yeah,
notes.
Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart. So the guy is now passed away. He was a really beautiful psychiatrist, really just such a good thinker. But one of the things he talked about is in order to be happy, you need something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. Like that's, in order to be happy, you really need something to look forward to. Happiness in a lot of ways requires a future. Yes, you can be present, but your present, I like the quote, the bigger your future, the better your present. Like these things are not disconnected, nor is your past, obviously. It's all occurring. And so I think that when you have anticipation for something to look forward to, it truly influences your relationships and your experience here and now. And that book, he goes into so many other good things, how to rewrite your narrative and your memories of the past. And obviously that influenced a lot of my work, and personality isn't permanent, but it's a good book. You'll like it.
I'll check it out. Thank you. So tell us finally where we can find your book.
Yeah, you can kind of get it anywhere. You can get it on Audible, Amazon, if bookstores still exist when you hear this. You can get it in bookstores. Yeah, but you can obviously get the digital version, or you can buy the hardcover. It is a beautiful book.
Ooh, it is pretty.
There's a pencil
Did you
on it and some
narrate it
eraser mark.
yourself?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
So yeah, and then obviously benjaminhardy.com is my website, and there's obviously free bonuses and free giveaways if you choose to get the book, and if that's something that's interesting to you.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It was really fabulous to have you, Dr. Hardy, and I really appreciate your time. Y'all have a fantastic day, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye.